11 days after Spain lifted the World Cup trophy in New Jersey. 11 days after the most controversial tournament in the history of the sport concluded. 11 days of investigations, leaked letters, ethics committee complaints, FBI probes, and 23 million petition signatures. 11 days during which the football world was still processing everything it had witnessed across 5 weeks of matches, decisions, controversies, and institutional failures. And then today happened. Today, July 31, 2026, is the day that could end Gianni Infantino's presidency of FIFA. Not a metaphor, not speculation from a pundit on television, a genuine, documented institutional crisis that has brought the three most powerful football confederations on the planet to the edge of refusing to participate in the World Cup itself unless Infantino withdraws a proposal that has now been publicly condemned as irresponsible, indefensible, and a fundamental threat to the game that billions of people love. UEFA will boycott FIFA competitions, including the World Cup. That sentence has never been written before in the history of football. Not in 2015, when 14 FIFA officials were indicted for corruption. Not in 1974, when European nations threatened to walk out of the World Cup over voting procedures. Not in any moment across more than a century of FIFA's existence. The European Confederation, representing 55 member associations, including every major footballing nation on the continent, issued a statement saying no UEFA national team will participate in any FIFA competition for so long as the proposal remains alive, unless it has been abandoned in its entirety and binding assurances have been given that FIFA will never again open its governance or competitions to private ownership. Binding assurances, abandoned in its entirety. Those are not negotiating positions. Those are ultimatums. And within hours of UEFA statement, all 41 members of CONCACAF, including the United States, Canada, and Mexico, the three nations that just finished hosting the World Cup 11 days ago, joined the rejection. The U.S. Soccer Federation posted on social media that it stands with CONCACAF and its members, and then the Asian Football Confederation, representing the largest single block of FIFA member associations by population, issued the statement that is now being described as a devastating blow to Infantino's position. The AFC stood in solidarity with UEFA and CONCACAF. It said the fact that a World Cup boycott had entered public discourse should concern everyone who cares about the future of the game. It said football should never have been placed in such a position. It called for an urgent review of FIFA's governance and decision-making framework. And it said something that goes beyond the specific proposal on the table and addresses the way FIFA under Infantino has operated for years. It said this is not the first occasion where major stakeholders have been confronted with significant initiatives after the direction of travel appears to have already been determined, that such an approach undermines confidence in FIFA's governance framework and diminishes the authority of its statutory bodies, and that no subsequent consultation, however well-intentioned, can replace early engagement with the appropriate FIFA bodies and the football family. That sentence, read it again. No subsequent consultation, however well-intentioned, can replace early engagement. The AFC is saying that FIFA made its decision, then tried to consult afterward, that the process was backwards, that the FIFA Council, the statutory body that is supposed to oversee exactly this kind of decision, was not involved before the direction was set, that member associations, the 211 federations that are supposed to own and govern the world game collectively, learned about a proposal to sell a stake in their sport through media reports rather than from FIFA itself. So what exactly is FIFA Forward Enterprises? Because to understand the scale of the revolt, you need to understand what Infantino was proposing to do. FIFA Forward Enterprises, or FFE, is a new commercial entity that Infantino revealed plans for this week. The proposal involves selling a minority stake of up to 21% of this new entity to private investors. The investors would acquire a share of the commercial operations of FIFA's flagship competitions, primarily the World Cup and the Club World Cup. In exchange, those investors would provide FIFA with approximately $20 billion in capital, which FIFA says would then flow to member associations and fund football development globally. The private equity firm expected to lead the investor group is called Thrive Eternal. It is headed by Joshua Kushner. Joshua Kushner is the brother of Jared Kushner, who is the son-in-law of the President of the United States, Donald Trump. The same Donald Trump who acknowledged calling Gianni Infantino to raise concerns about the Balogun red card during the 2026 World Cup. The same Donald Trump who received the FIFA Peace Prize from Infantino before the tournament. The same Donald Trump whose administration's policies affected fan and player access to the tournament that just concluded. The investor group expected to purchase a 21% stake in the commercial operations of the World Cup is connected by family to the sitting American president who has a documented relationship with the FIFA president. That is not speculation. Those are the documented connections between the entities involved in this proposal. UEFA said football's future cannot be dictated by stakeholders seeking financial gain. It called the proposal irresponsible and indefensible. It said it was brought forward without seeking feedback from the countries that make up the organization. And it issued an ultimatum that has no precedent in the history of the sport. CONCACAF expressed deep concerns about the lack of due process surrounding the proposal, the artificially short deadline imposed, and the absence of any review or approval by the relevant FIFA governance bodies. All 41 of its member associations, at an emergency meeting convened specifically to address this proposal, unanimously rejected it. The host confederations of the tournament that ended 11 days ago, the confederations whose nations just generated over $40 billion in economic activity from the World Cup, are telling the FIFA president that what he is proposing is unacceptable. FIFA responded. Infantino defended the proposal. FIFA said nobody is selling football and blamed what it described as erroneous reporting in the media for the criticism. It said the $20 billion generated would benefit all member associations. It said the proposal was optional. It said it had been presented transparently. Nobody is selling football. That is Infantino's response. To UEFA threatening a boycott, to all 41 CONCACAF members unanimously rejecting the proposal, and to AFC calling for an urgent review of FIFA's governance framework. Nobody is selling football. But here is what this proposal actually means in practice. Think about the investor logic. Private equity firms do not provide $20 billion to acquire a stake in a commercial entity without expecting a return on that investment. The return comes from increasing the commercial value of the asset they have purchased a stake in. The commercial value of the World Cup increases through expansion, through more matches, through more teams, through longer tournaments, through more advertising opportunities, through more broadcast windows. When hydration breaks were introduced at the 2026 World Cup, broadcasters were able to insert additional advertising segments that generated significant revenue. That format decision, presented as a player welfare measure in the heat of summer matches, also happened to align perfectly with the commercial interests of broadcasters paying for rights. Under the FEE structure, with private investors holding a 21% stake and seeking a return, the incentive to make every format decision that generates additional commercial revenue becomes structurally embedded in the governance of the World Cup itself. That is what UEFA is objecting to. Not the $20 billion in principle, not the idea of football development funding for smaller associations, the structural incentive that private ownership introduces. The moment a private investor holds a stake in the commercial operations of the World Cup stops being governed purely by sporting criteria. Every decision about team numbers, match lengths, broadcast windows, sponsorship categories, and competition formats now has to be weighed against the financial interests of an investor group that paid $20 billion for the privilege of influencing those decisions. UEFA said its member nations unanimously and unequivocally reject the proposal. Unanimously. 55 associations, not 54 with one abstention, not 53 in favor with 2 against. Unanimous. The arithmetic of what this means for Infantino's proposal is simple. FIFA needs the approval of a majority of its 211 member associations to establish FFE. UEFA represents 55 of those associations. CONCACAF represents 41. The AFC represents 47. Three confederations that have now publicly rejected the proposal, collectively representing 143 member associations, have told FIFA that this proposal cannot realistically achieve the necessary broad consensus and unity required to move forward. Those are the AFC's exact words, cannot realistically achieve the necessary consensus. 143 associations. A proposal needs a majority of 211. The math does not work for Infantino. Not even close. Not unless the remaining confederations, CONMEBOL representing South America, CAF representing Africa, and OFC representing Oceania, provide enough support to overcome the opposition that has now publicly crystallized against this proposal from 3 of the 6 confederations. And sitting underneath the specific proposal is the broader question that the AFC was careful to name explicitly. This is not about FFE alone. This is about a pattern of major stakeholders being confronted with significant initiatives after the direction of travel appears to have already been determined. A pattern of the FIFA Council being sidelined. A pattern of member associations learning about decisions affecting their sport through media coverage rather than through formal consultation. A pattern that the AFC said must now be addressed. That pattern is the same one that produced the Balogun red card reversal during the World Cup, the same one that produced the leaked congratulatory letter to Argentina, the same one that produced the FIFA Peace Prize awarded before the tournament, the same one that Norway's Federation President Lise Klaveness identified in her formal complaint to the Ethics Committee, the same one that 50 European Parliament members cited in their petition demanding an investigation into Infantino's conduct. One man making decisions, one man determining direction, one man presenting outcomes to institutions that are supposed to be part of the process and asking them to approve what has already been decided. And now those institutions, 3 of the 6 confederations that make up the structure of world football, have said simultaneously and in writing that they will not accept it anymore. Infantino's 11-year presidency is now under what ESPN described as growing scrutiny from member associations around the world. That is the understated way of saying that the man who has run FIFA since 2016, who was re-elected unopposed in 2023 with a term running to 2027, who described the 2026 World Cup as the biggest event probably in the history of mankind, is now facing the most serious institutional challenge of his presidency at the worst possible moment. The 2026 World Cup is still processing its legacy. The FIFA Ethics Committee complaint from Norway is pending. The European Parliament petition demanding investigation of his conduct is filed. The FBI is examining Argentine Federation finances. The leaked letter praising Argentina's professionalism while their players face bans is public and verified. And now UEFA, CONCACAF, and the AFC have told them that the proposal he brought to the table without proper consultation, without FIFA Council review, without adequate notice to member associations, cannot proceed. The game belongs to the entire global football family, the AFC said. Their future must always be shaped collectively, through institutions that reflect the voices of all confederations and member associations. That sentence is not about FFE specifically. It is about what kind of institution FIFA is going to be, whether it governs football on behalf of the 211 associations that are its members, or whether it is governed by one man who decides direction before the appropriate bodies are consulted and then presents the outcome for approval. That question is the most important one in world football right now. More important than any result from the 2026 World Cup. More important than any ban handed to any player. More important than any ethics committee proceeding or parliamentary petition. Because the answer to that question determines not just the 2030 or 2034 World Cup, it determines what the World Cup is. What do you think? Do you believe UEFA, CONCACAF, and the AFC have the collective power to force Infantino to abandon the FFE proposal entirely? Or will FIFA find a way to proceed with a modified version that enough smaller member associations will support? And with Infantino's presidency now under the most serious institutional pressure it has ever faced, do you think he survives to lead FIFA to the 2030 World Cup? Or does this crisis end his time in charge? Let us know in the comments. Like and subscribe for every update as this story develops across the next 24 to 48 hours, and share this with every football fan who needs to understand that what is happening today is the most important moment in football governance since 2015.